Judgment at Nuremberg wasn't just the most powerful courtroom drama ever made. It was Hollywood's most expensive therapy session, a film where broken stars gave career-defining performances they couldn't remember filming, where Marlene Dietrich vomited every night from moral anguish, and where a 1965 television premiere would accidentally become the most important broadcast in civil rights history when 48 million Americans watched actual footage of concentration camps cut to footage of Alabama state troopers beating John Lewis on a bridge in Selma. Behind Stanley Kramer's courtroom epic lies a production where Montgomery Clift was so drunk he ad-libbed his entire Oscar-nominated scene. Judy Garland received a standing ovation for simply showing up after 7 years of exile. Spencer Tracy filmed an 11-minute speech in one take while William Shatner blurted, "I didn't know film actors could do that." And Marlon Brando got rejected for a role that went to an unknown actor who became the lowest billed Best Actor winner in history. This is the film where stars worked for expenses only because the subject matter mattered more than money, and where breaking news about American racism would give Nazi Germany's story an unbearable modern resonance. I am about to reveal 20 weird facts about Judgment at Nuremberg that expose how Hollywood's most important actors risked everything to make cinema confront history's darkest chapter. And stick around for the bonus fact about what happened to every single war criminal. This film depicted a twisted ending that makes the entire movie even more devastating. Let's enter the courtroom. Number 1, Katharine Hepburn. Secretly produced the film to save Spencer Tracy's life. Nobody knows this, but the entire film exists because of Katharine Hepburn's desperate attempt to keep Spencer Tracy alive. Hepburn shepherded the project from its origins as a 1959 Playhouse 90 television episode to this 3-hour epic specifically to give Tracy work. Why? Tracy's health was deteriorating from decades of excessive drinking, and Hepburn discovered that his only periods of stability came when he was working. She knew that filming kept him sober and gave him purpose, so she used her Hollywood influence to convince producer Stanley Kramer to expand the TV production into a feature film, ensuring Tracy would have the role of Chief Judge Dan Haywood, a character who required months of filming and would keep Tracy occupied, healthy, and away from the bottle. Without Hepburn's behind-the-scenes maneuvering, this masterpiece would have remained a forgotten television episode. She was producing a film to save the man she loved, and nobody involved knew that was the real mission. Tracy never knew the lengths Hepburn went to keep him working. And alive, number 2, Montgomery Clift was so drunk. He couldn't remember his lines, so the director told him to ad-lib everything Montgomery Clift. Arrived on set in the worst shape of his life. Post-accident, bloated from alcohol, his face paralyzed, battling late-stage alcoholism and prescription drug addiction, he was barely functional. His 12-minute scene as a mentally disabled baker sterilized by the Nazis required him to testify on the witness stand. One problem. Clift couldn't remember a single line. Not one. Stanley Kramer watched takes collapse as Clift struggled, stuttered, reached desperately for words that wouldn't come. Finally, Kramer made a revolutionary decision. Forget the script entirely. He told Clift to ad-lib whatever came out, to use his struggle with memory as part of the character's confusion. If Clift couldn't find a word, Kramer told him to physically reach for it, to show the character's brain damage. The result? Clift's performance wasn't acting. It was real neurological struggle captured on film. His stammering, his slurred speech, his jittery movements, his desperate attempts to communicate, all genuine, all Clift's actual condition bleeding into the character. The performance took 3 days to film. Crew members watched in stunned silence. When Clift finally finished, the entire set erupted in spontaneous applause. His ad-libbed confusion earned him his 4th and final Oscar nomination. Directors later confirmed Clift wasn't close to the script, but everything he said fit perfectly. The most devastating performance in the film was a documentary of one man's collapse. Number 3, Judy Garland received a standing ovation just for showing up. When Judy Garland walked onto the Universal Studios lot on March 8, 1961 for her first day of filming, something extraordinary happened before she spoke a single line. The entire cast and crew stopped working, stood up, and gave her a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. Why? This was Garland's first film in 7 years, her first major movie project since A Star is Born in 1954. Those 7 years had been brutal. Suicide attempts, hospitalizations, bankruptcy, addiction, weight gain, career collapse. Hollywood had written her off as unemployable, but Stanley Kramer had seen her in concert and was so moved by her emotional power that he offered her the role of Irene Hoffman despite her notorious reputation for being difficult and unreliable. When she arrived, the crew knew what this meant. Judy Garland was attempting a comeback against impossible odds. The standing ovation was Hollywood saying, "We still believe in you." Garland, paid just $50,000 for the role, was so happy to be working again that it initially took her a while to emotionally access the dark breakdown her scene required. She was too joyful just to be on a film set. The reduced pressure of a small supporting role rather than carrying an entire picture helped her stay focused and professional throughout production. Number 4, Spencer Tracy's 11-minute closing speech was filmed in one continuous take. The film's climactic moment, Judge Haywood's 11-minute verdict speech, represents one of cinema's greatest technical and performance achievements. Stanley Kramer set up multiple cameras shooting simultaneously from different angles and told Tracy, "We're filming this in one take. No cuts, no breaks. Just you, 11 minutes of complex legal and moral philosophy, and the weight of history." On the day of filming, the Universal Pictures set was packed to capacity with studio executives and Hollywood celebrities who had heard about the attempt. Everyone wanted to witness it. Kramer chose the one-take approach not because breaking it up would lessen impact, but because he knew he'd get maximum emotional payoff from Tracy without starting and stopping. Tracy delivered the entire speech flawlessly in one go. Sitting directly in front of Tracy was William Shatner, who would later become Captain Kirk. When Tracy finished, Shatner blurted out in genuine shock, "I didn't know film actors could do that." Tracy, who valued professionalism above all, was so annoyed by the outburst that he shunned Shatner for the rest of the shoot. The 11-minute take beat Tracy's own record from Inherit the Wind, where he delivered a 10-minute jury summation in one take. No other actor in Hollywood had the skill or nerve to attempt monologues of this length without cutting. Number 5, Marlene Dietrich got physically ill and vomited every night. Filming her scenes. Marlene Dietrich, who had fled Nazi Germany and worked for the Allies during World War II, faced an impossible task, playing Frau Berthold, the widow of a Nazi general, who claims German civilians didn't know about the atrocities. For Dietrich, who knew the truth intimately, this was psychological torture. She actually knew the real general whose wife she was portraying, which deepened her understanding but made the emotional toll unbearable. During filming, Dietrich had such trouble with the scene where she denies German knowledge of the Holocaust that she couldn't maintain concentration. The sentiment was so repulsive to her, she who had witnessed it firsthand, who had worked against the Nazis, who had lost friends, that she physically couldn't function. Only after Spencer Tracy personally counseled her off camera was she able to complete the scene. But the damage didn't end when cameras stopped rolling. According to her grandson Peter Riva's interview on the Icons Radio Hour, Dietrich would return home after filming and get so physically ill from the moral anguish of playing someone defending Nazi ignorance that she would vomit. Night after night, the role made her sick. Her daughter Maria finally advised her to simply play your mother, acknowledging that Dietrich's own mother had stayed in Germany and claimed similar ignorance. Number 6, Marlon Brando begged for a role and got rejected for an unknown actor, in a rare moment of Brando actually pursuing a part rather than being courted. The world's greatest actor approached Stanley Kramer personally and asked to play Hans Rolf, the German defense attorney. Brando, then at the peak of his powers and star status, wanted the role badly enough to break protocol and campaign for it. Kramer and screenwriter Abby Mann were intrigued. Imagine Marlon Brando defending Nazi judges. The star power, the prestige, the box office potential. But they had already seen Maximilian Schell play the same role in the original 1959 Playhouse 90 television broadcast. Schell was relatively unknown, barely a Hollywood name, but his performance had been so compelling, so precise that Kramer and Mann made the shocking decision to reject Brando and keep Schell. They told Brando no. The greatest actor of his generation got turned down for an unknown. Schell went on to win the Oscar for Best Actor, becoming the lowest billed lead category winner in Academy history, listed 5th in the credits after Tracy, Lancaster, Widmark, and Dietrich. Spencer Tracy himself predicted it. He told Richard Widmark while watching Schell film a scene, "We've got to watch out for that young man. He's very good. He's going to walk away with the Oscar for this picture." Another version, Tracy turned to Widmark and said simply, "Dick, we're in trouble." Number 7, Montgomery Clift watched Judy Garland's scene and broke down crying. then told everyone she played it wrong. The two most damaged stars in the film found each other. Clift and Garland became close friends during production, recognizing kindred spirits. Both were broken, both were attempting impossible comebacks, both were considered uninsurable liabilities. Though Clift's scenes were filmed before Garland's began, he stayed on set for an additional week just to watch her work. When Garland filmed her devastating breakdown scene where she's brutally cross-examined by Maximilian Schell about her relationship with an elderly Jewish man, Clift sat in a corner of the soundstage watching. As Garland's character relived her trauma, as she sobbed and shook under Schell's aggressive questioning, Clift huddled into a ball and began weeping openly. The scene triggered something in him. After filming ended, he approached Kramer still crying and said something nobody expected. He thought Judy had played it wrong. Clift, who could barely function, who had ad-libbed his entire performance because he couldn't remember lines, was critiquing Judy Garland's technique. What he meant remains unclear. Perhaps he felt she had gone too far or not far enough. But the moment reveals how even in his deteriorated state, Clift remained hypercritical of performance craft. Garland later said Clift's reaction moved her deeply. Number 8. The film used actual concentration camp footage. The first Hollywood film to show it, Judgment at Nuremberg, broke a 16-year Hollywood taboo. The film was the first mainstream American drama to use actual footage filmed by USA and British Army Signal Corps after the liberation of Dachau and Buchenwald concentration camps. Not reenactments, not simulations. Actual documentary footage of massive piles of naked corpses laid out in rows, of living skeletons barely able to stand, of industrial-scale death machinery. Kramer showed this footage during the courtroom scenes, forcing his characters and audiences to witness what the judges on trial had enabled. The footage was so graphic, so unbearable, that theaters warned audiences. Some viewers left, but Kramer refused to shy away or sanitize. During production, he showed this same footage to the cast and crew before filming began. He wanted them to understand what they were depicting. The emotional impact devastated everyone. Actors watched in horrified silence. This was 1961, only 16 years after the liberation. The footage wasn't historical distance, it was recent memory. By including actual liberation footage rather than Hollywood recreations, Kramer made an ethical statement. This really happened, and we will not fictionalize genocide to make it palatable for entertainment. Number 9. Most actors worked for practically nothing because they believed in the message. This was Hollywood's most expensive bargain basement production. Major stars lined up to work for fractions of their usual salaries because they felt the subject matter was so important. Montgomery Clift was so eager to appear in the film that he offered to work for expenses only, waiving his fee entirely. This from an actor who, despite his troubles, could still command significant pay. He worked for minimum compensation just to be part of the project. Judy Garland received $50,000 for 11 days of filming, a pittance for a former MGM queen who had once earned millions. Other stars similarly slashed their rates. The actors understood they were making something that mattered more than profit. Screenwriter Abby Mann was paid $200,000 for his screenplay, 20 times more than the $6,000 he had received for writing the original television version. But even that paled compared to what he could have earned on a commercial project. The production cost $3 million total, remarkably low for a film with this many stars. Everyone involved prioritized message over money. They wanted to ensure this story reached the widest possible audience, and inflated salaries would have made that financially impossible. Number 10. Stanley Kramer built the courtroom set on rollers, so cameras could shoot 360 degrees. Kramer had a specific method of pre-production that sounds insane but worked perfectly. He built all sets 6 weeks before filming began. Not just designed them, physically constructed them. Then he sat down with cinematographer Ernest Laszlo and went through the screenplay scene by scene, working out every lighting setup and camera position in advance. The courtroom set was built on rollers, allowing it to rotate and letting cameras shoot from any angle, 360 degrees of possibility. Once the technical work was planned, Kramer brought in actors and walked them through the sets, explaining his shooting thought process and taking their suggestions. This method, demanding and expensive, meant that when filming actually began, everyone knew exactly what they were doing. The film sort of demanded it be shot in sequence with a single camera, Laszlo later explained. Kramer's approach minimized retakes and confusion. The courtroom set's rotating capability allowed fluid, dynamic cinematography that never felt static despite the film being mostly people talking in a single room. The careful pre-planning is why a 3-hour courtroom drama never feels claustrophobic or stage-bound. Every angle was calculated weeks in advance. Number 11, the 1965 television premiere was interrupted by Bloody Sunday, creating the most powerful juxtaposition in broadcast history. March 7, 1965. Sunday night. The biggest television audience of the week, 48 million Americans, tune into ABC for the highly anticipated television premiere of Judgment at Nuremberg. The film has barely started when ABC News makes an unprecedented decision. Interrupt the movie with a special report. Footage has just arrived from Selma, Alabama, where state troopers have brutally beaten civil rights marchers on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. BC's Frank Reynolds breaks into the broadcast, and suddenly, 48 million people watching a film about Nazi atrocities are seeing American state troopers clubbing peaceful black protesters. The juxtaposition strikes like psychological lightning. Viewers are watching judges who enabled the Holocaust, then cutting to images of Alabama troopers that look disturbingly similar to Nazi stormtroopers. The connection is immediate, undeniable, devastating. In the days following, dozens of legislators speak on the floor of Congress, linking Governor George Wallace to Hitler. One Alabamian writes to the Birmingham News, "I have just witnessed on television the new sequel to Adolf Hitler's brown shirts. They were George Wallace's blue shirts." The scene in Alabama looked like scenes on old newsreels of Germany in the 1930s. Hundreds of clergy who watched the broadcast immediately traveled to Selma, many saying, "I was watching Judgment at Nuremberg and I just couldn't stay away." The interrupted broadcast becomes one of the most important moments in television history. A film about moral responsibility for fascism, cut with footage proving America's own ongoing atrocities. Number 12, Burt Lancaster speaks only 3 lines until his explosive confession. 135 minutes into the film Burt Lancaster, one of Hollywood's biggest stars plays Ernst Janning, the most distinguished German judge on trial. For 135 minutes, he sits silently, speaking only 3 lines, none in the courtroom. He watches testimony, he listens to evidence, he remains impassive, unreadable, a cipher. The entire film builds toward one question: what will Janning say? Then, 135 minutes in, after Judy Garland's character has been destroyed on the witness stand, Janning suddenly interrupts the proceedings. Lancaster explodes into a monologue, admitting guilt, condemning himself, confessing that he knew what was happening and chose Hitler's promises of national greatness over justice. The speech, several minutes long, is delivered with such precision and building fury that it stops the trial cold. Lancaster's silence makes the confession devastating. We have waited so long to hear him speak that when he finally does, every word carries seismic weight. The casting strategy was brilliant. Lancaster's star power guarantees audiences will keep watching, waiting for his moment. And when it comes, it's worth the wait. Lancaster was second choice for the role. Kramer preferred to use a German actor. Original, first choice, Laurence Olivier dropped out. But Lancaster's ability to project moral authority made him perfect for a judge whose fall from grace defines the entire film. Number 13, the film's ending reveals that by 1961, every single Nazi judge was free. The final title card delivers a gut punch that changes everything you have just watched. Of 99 defendants sentenced to prison terms in Nuremberg trials that took place in the American zone, none was still serving a sentence when the film was released in 1961. Every single one released. The judges who legalized genocide, who sentenced innocent people to death, who enabled Hitler's machinery of destruction, all free within 13 years of their convictions. Why? The Cold War, the Berlin airlift, American need for German cooperation against the Soviet Union. Political expediency made justice inconvenient. The film has spent 3 hours depicting a trial that meant nothing. The verdict was just theater. The real message: morality collapses when geopolitics demand it. Critics have pointed out that Rudolf Hess and other major defendants remained imprisoned at Spandau. But the title card is technically accurate. It specifies American zone trials. The international tribunal defendants, tried by all 4 Allied powers, remained imprisoned. But the subsequent American-only trials resulted in sentences that were commuted for political convenience. The ending transforms the entire film from a story about justice triumphing to a tragedy about justice betrayed. We prosecuted Nazis to feel morally superior, then released them when it became politically useful to forgive. Number 14. The film's release coincided with Adolf Eichmann's trial in Israel. Timing made the film explosively relevant. In May 1960, Israeli Mossad agents kidnapped Nazi SS officer Adolf Eichmann from Argentina and brought him to Jerusalem to stand trial for organizing the Holocaust logistics. His trial began April 11, 1961, months before Judgment at Nuremberg premiered in December. The world was transfixed by Eichmann's trial, watching him sit in a glass booth, claiming he was just following orders, showing no remorse. Then Kramer's film arrived, exploring the same questions. How responsible are individuals for following unjust laws? Can was following orders excuse participation in genocide? Critics noted the perfect timing. The film wasn't just historical meditation, it was contemporary commentary on Eichmann's defense. Both the real trial and the fictional film asked, at what point does obedience to law become moral cowardice? The Eichmann trial gave the film urgent relevance, and the film gave audiences a dramatic framework for understanding Eichmann's bland bureaucratic evil. Hannah Arendt would later coin the phrase the banality of evil while covering Eichmann's trial. Kramer's film dramatizes that same concept. These weren't monsters, they were judges who convinced themselves they were patriots doing their duty. Number 15. Judy Garland asked Maximilian Schell to be even tougher during her breakdown scene. During Garland's climactic scene where defense attorney Rolf Schell brutally cross-examines her about her relationship with an elderly Jewish man, Garland gave Schell unusual direction. Be tougher with me. She wanted him to attack harder, question more aggressively, push her further. Schell was already planning an intense interrogation. His character is trying to destroy her credibility to save his clients, but Garland needed to feel genuinely attacked to access the trauma her character experiences. She asked Schell not to hold back, not to protect her emotions, to genuinely make her suffer. The resulting scene became one of cinema's most difficult to watch sequences. Schell tears into her, accusing her of lying, implying she was complicit, suggesting she enjoyed the attention. Garland's face crumbles, tears stream. She's being re-traumatized in real time, forced to relive the worst day of her life while lawyers turn it into courtroom strategy. Schell's performance won him the Best Actor Oscar, and his scene opposite Garland is perhaps the showiest moment of his entire role. Garland transforms the aggressive questioning into visible dissolution. We watch a decent woman beaten down by legal system that's supposed to protect her. She plays vulnerability without manipulation, suffering without histrionics. Number 16. Stanley Kramer flew 300 journalists to Berlin for the world premiere. The world premiere took place December 14, 1961 at the Kongresshalle in West Berlin, Germany. Kramer made a bold, expensive decision. He flew 300 journalists from 22 countries to attend. It was a massive publicity gamble, bringing international press to the city that had been divided by the Berlin Wall just 4 months earlier. West Berlin Mayor Willy Brandt introduced the film, telling reporters that his countrymen welcomed the film even if we have to feel shame at many of its aspects. The premiere was equipped with technology unprecedented for 1961, headphones offering synchronized soundtracks in German, French, Italian, and Spanish. The original English dialogue played on screen while viewers could listen to translations in real time. German viewers' reactions were mixed and intense. Some critics felt the film presented the judges in too positive a light, not harsh enough. Others were grateful for the confrontation with history. The film sparked real-world consequences in Germany. Student protesters targeted Judge Hermann Markel of Munich, who had sentenced a Jewish man to death in 1942 for racial infamy. Protesters distributed leaflets mentioning judgment at Nuremberg, comparing fictional judges to real ones still living. Markel resigned. The film became a catalyst for Germans confronting their recent past and demanding accountability from surviving Nazi officials. Number 17. In 1961, 29 U.S. states had eugenics programs identical to what the film depicts. The film's most uncomfortable truth: America was still doing what it prosecuted Nazis for. In 1961, when the film premiered, 29 U.S. states had active eugenics boards performing forced sterilizations on people deemed unfit. The mentally disabled, the poor, minorities, the exact crime for which Montgomery Clift's character testifies. Additionally, many states maintained anti-miscegenation laws prohibiting interracial marriage until the Supreme Court struck them down in 1967, 6 years after the film's release. The laws the German judges are on trial for enforcing had American equivalents still on the books. This parallel was intentional. Abby Mann's screenplay forces viewers to recognize that the Nuremberg laws weren't uniquely German, they had American precedents. American eugenics programs inspired Nazi policies. In the 1920s and 30s, German scientists cited American research to justify their own racial hygiene programs. The film's deeper message, we prosecuted Germans for systemizing and industrializing practices that America pioneered. The hypocrisy is crushing. We held trials in 1947 to 48 for judges who enforced laws similar to ones remaining in American legal codes until 1979, when eugenics programs were finally struck down. The film's moral authority collapses under the weight of American complicity. Number 18. Spencer Tracy predicted Maximilian Schell's Oscar win, and it terrified Richard Widmark. During production, Spencer Tracy, the most respected actor in Hollywood, pulled Richard Widmark aside while watching Maximilian Schell film a scene. Tracy said to Widmark, "We've got to watch. Out for that young man. He's very good. He's going to walk away with the Oscar for this picture." Widmark, playing the prosecutor opposite Schell's defense attorney, understood immediately what Tracy meant. They were being outperformed. Schell, relatively unknown, was delivering such a powerful performance that the established stars worried he would overshadow them. In another telling of the story, Tracy's warning was even more direct. He approached Widmark and said simply, "Dick, we're in trouble." Tracy was right. Schell won Best Actor, beating out Paul Newman for The Hustler, Charles Boyer for Fanny, and Stuart Whitman for The Mark. The win is historically significant for another reason. Schell is billed fifth in the opening credits after Tracy, Lancaster, Widmark, and Dietrich. He remains the lowest billed actor ever to win the lead actor category. Typically, Best Actor winners are top billed stars. Schell's lower billing and unknown status made his victory shocking, but Tracy had seen it coming from day one. The old master recognized greatness and knew when he was being upstaged. Number 19. Abby Mann was paid $200,000. 33 times more than he earned for the TV version screenwriter. Abby Mann first became interested in the Nuremberg trials after meeting Abraham Pomerantz at a 1957 New York dinner party. Pomerantz had been involved in the trials, and his stories fascinated Mann. Mann wrote the original teleplay for Playhouse 90, which aired April 16, 1959. His payment, $6,000. 2 years later, when the film version was produced, Mann was paid $200,000 for adapting and expanding his own work. That's 33 times his television salary for essentially the same story. The massive payment increase reflects Hollywood's recognition that Mann had created something extraordinary and that expanding it into a feature film required substantial rewriting. Mann had to open up the teleplay, add scenes outside the courtroom to avoid claustrophobia, expand character backstories, and make it cinema rather than filmed theater. His screenplay won the Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay. The financial jump from $6,000 to $200,000 shows the vast gulf between television and film budgets in 1961. Television was still considered the minor leagues, a place to develop material before moving to real movies. Mann's career-changing payday came because Kramer recognized the material's cinematic potential and knew expanding it required serious craftsmanship. Number 20, William Shatner. Watched Spencer Tracy work and ruined his own career moment. William Shatner had a small role as Captain Byers, Judge Haywood's aide. Shatner, years before becoming Captain Kirk, idolized Spencer Tracy. He considered Tracy the greatest film actor alive. On the day, Tracy filmed his 11-minute closing speech in one continuous take. Shatner was sitting directly in front of Tracy, meant to be visible in the shot. Kramer called action. Tracy delivered the entire speech flawlessly without a single mistake. When Tracy finished, Shatner was so overwhelmed by what he had just witnessed that he blurted out loud in genuine amazement, "I didn't know film actors could do that." The comment broke the professional silence. Tracy, who valued set professionalism and decorum above everything, was furious at the interruption. Despite Shatner's comment being genuine praise from a young actor witnessing mastery, Tracy felt it was unprofessional to speak during filming. For the remainder of the shoot, Tracy shunned Shatner completely. He refused to speak to him, wouldn't acknowledge him. treated him as invisible. Shatner had ruined what should have been his moment learning from his idol. The incident became a Hollywood legend, an example of how even genuine admiration can backfire when it violates set protocol. Shatner never forgot being frozen out by his hero for expressing awe at genius. Bonus fact, the film's most notorious viewer, a serial killer on a first date. On their very first date, Ian Brady and Myra Hindley went to see Judgment at Nuremberg. Brady, fascinated by Nazi Germany, and Hindley, infatuated with Brady, sat together watching scenes of systematic evil and judicial complicity. They would go on to become the Moors murderers, one of Britain's most infamous criminal partnerships, torturing and killing 5 children between 1963 to 1965. Brady later claimed Nazi ideology influenced his crimes. The fact that their relationship began with this particular film about the banalization of evil, about ordinary people enabling atrocities, about how civilized society can produce monsters, adds a horrifying dimension to the movie's legacy. What did they take from it? Did Brady see the Nazi judges as heroes rather than villains? Did the film's depiction of systematic cruelty provide inspiration rather than warning? The prosecutors who tried Brady and Hindley noted their fascination with Nazi Germany and their belief in Nietzschean philosophies about superior individuals being above moral law. Judgment at Nuremberg is designed to make viewers confront how evil happens through ordinary systems. Brady and Hindley watched that lesson and learned the wrong message. The film, meant to prevent future atrocities, may have helped inspire 2 people to commit their own. Judgment at Nuremberg remains cinema's most powerful confrontation with institutional evil. A film where broken actors delivered career-defining performances, where a 1965 television premiere accidentally became a civil rights turning point, and where the ending reveals that justice itself was theater performed for a world moving on from genocide. It proved that Hollywood stars would sacrifice money for meaning, that courtroom drama could be electrifying cinema, and that the most important question isn't how could this happen, but why did we forgive them when it became convenient? The film's legacy endures because it refuses easy answers. Every character has a point, every argument has weight, and that final title card, that every defendant went free, transforms triumph into tragedy. We didn't learn. We prosecuted, then forgave. We condemned evil, then made deals with it. If you learned something shocking today, hit that like button and subscribe for more weird movie history that reveals the gap between what we see on screen and what happened behind the scenes. And let me know in the comments, should moral principles ever be compromised for political expediency? Or is that how we become the Nazis? Because in Nuremberg, justice lasted exactly as long as it remained politically useful.